After months of threats, the moment of truth with Iran is approaching. The escalation with Iran is nearing a decisive stage, and an American strike could take place within hours or days. The US and Israel are raising alert levels and preparing for a wide regional confrontation. Trump confirmed he spoke with Iran. I told them no nuclear and stop killing protesters. In cooperation with Israel, the US prepared a target bank for strikes in Iran and Trump's options. The European Union against Iran, the implication of declaring the Revolutionary Guards a terrorist organization. Everyone is talking about an American military strike on Iran, but the attack on the Revolutionary Guards has already begun in a different way. It's already happening right now, and we'll explain it all once we get started. I'm Mati Shoshani in a special Boots on the Ground live report bringing you today the entire truth about the Middle East. And today we'll understand why the attack on Iran has already begun, even though no one has fired a single missile yet. So what will we talk about today and what's happening? Briefly, for the first time, the US president confirmed that he spoke with Tehran after weeks of tension and reports about a possible strike. In a conversation with reporters at the premiere screening of his wife Melania's documentary film, he claimed the Iranians are killing protesters by the thousands. And he warned, we have a lot of ships sailing there. It would be great if we don't have to use them. Additional American military assets are expected to arrive in the Middle East, and the White House and the Pentagon briefed the president on the plans. Officials familiar with the intelligence reports believe the wave of protests could erupt once more. Iran's army announced a war will include the entire region. Iran also announced that the military received 1,000 strategic UAVs that are capable of destroying targets at sea, in air, and on land. And yesterday, Tehran threatened that any American strike would be considered the opening of a war, and that would also hit Israel. Tonight, it was reported that Trump is considering striking Iranian leaders to inflame the protesters to go out on the streets. Countries in the Middle East are trying to mediate between the sides and remove fears of military confrontation, and so far, they've not been successful. Intelligence Chief Binder arrived in the US for talks on Iran. Senior Saudi officials also arrived. A wave of mass arrests in Iran. The regime is pulling people out and imprisoning them in warehouses. Now, according to a human rights organization, the number of detainees stands at 42,000, and of them in recent days. Eyewitnesses spoke of forces in civilian clothing who are storming even hospitals. Tehran says it's ready for negotiations, but demands guarantees. And statements and reality are two different things. The Middle East countries are playing a double game with Iran. While countries in the region rush to declare neutrality, behind the scenes, there's a security coordination at peak intensity. The European Union against Iran. The implications of declaring the Revolutionary Guard a terrorist organization, and this has severe implications, not just for them, but for the region. And a deepening of Iran's severe economic crisis and a worsening of diplomatic relations. The damage will be significant because of the Revolutionary Guard's central share in the Iranian economy. But it is also coming at a time when many economic ties are already very limited. Unfortunately, Iranian citizens will pay a large part of the price. And also, on top of that, a comprehensive investigation exposes the scope of the secret economic empire of Ali Khamenei's son, who is emerging as a possible successor, exactly at a time when Iran's leadership is trying to project an image of religious modesty and living with very little. A lot is ahead of us. Let's dive into the details. I'm Mati Shoshani, bringing you the whole truth about what's happening in the Middle East. This is day 848 of the war against Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis, the militias in Iraq, and the terror organizations in Judea and Samaria, all under the control of the Revolutionary Guards of Iran, the head of the evil in the Middle East. 1 second before we begin, I want to ask you to be ambassadors of the truth. How, you may ask? It is very simple. Share our content with as many people as possible. And if you're not following us yet, now is the time to stay tuned to the truth. Click the subscribe button so you stay tuned in for the truth. So first of all, let's talk about the metro situation and underground parking garages in Tehran that are now being converted into shelters. At the same time, Iran announces that on Sunday, it will launch a naval drill in the Straits of Hormuz, a move that could disrupt maritime traffic in that area. This is an unusual event. Washington is having a hard time overlooking it because Hormuz is an artery of global trade. And the Iranian message is entirely clear. If you get any closer, we will move the gate. Now, it's important to note that if between writing these lines and publishing them, the United States doesn't strike Iran, then it's likely that this could happen within a time frame of hours to days, even though there is no one, including myself, reporting this who knows if and when an American strike on Iran will be carried out. But here we need to put everything that is clear on the table. On the political level, President Trump confirms for the first time that he spoke in recent days with Tehran and intends to speak again. His message is in two lines is, no nuclear and stop killing the protesters. He also adds a direct threat. We have many powerful ships sailing to Iran right now, and it would be great if we don't have to use them. Within the administration, War Secretary Pete Hegseth says Iran has every opportunity to reach an agreement, but emphasizes they have no right to seek nuclear capabilities. Otherwise, the US will be ready to deliver what Trump expects. Now, behind the scenes, options are being built. The big plan includes a broad bombing campaign against regime facilities and the Revolutionary Guard Corps. There are also small options, strikes on symbolic targets with room for escalation, and on the margins, cyber attacks on banks in Iran or tougher sanctions. At the same time, additional military assets are following the Middle East and flowing into the Middle East. Warships, refueling aircraft, fighter jets, and ground-based air defense systems. Secretary of State Marco Rubio noted that there are nearly 40,000 American soldiers at 9 bases, all within range of Iranian missiles and UAVs. Guys, if you're joining us live, I'm Mati Shoshani. This is a live broadcast on everything that is happening in Iran. Let me check a minute for just on the comments, just 1 second. Okay, I think we are good. Where were we? So Tehran responds with threats. The army spokesperson warns, if the enemy takes a foolish step, we will respond immediately, and emphasizes that the scope of the confrontation could include the entire region, from Israel to the countries hosting American bases. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says the finger is on the trigger and ready to respond in the air, at the sea, and on land. Ali Shahmani states that the American strike at any level will be considered the opening of a war, and threatens harm to Israel as well. At the same time, Iran is bringing into its ranks 1,000 strategic UAVs, and claims are intended to destroy targets at sea, in the air, and on the land. And in diplomacy, Araghchi goes to Ankara and conducts a blitz of talks with Egypt, Qatar, Oman, Pakistan, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates. Erdogan even proposes a conversation between Trump and Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian. Moscow also enters the picture. Sergei Lavrov says Russia is ready to help reduce tensions and speaks of common sense and responsibility. Now, in the European arena, EU foreign ministers agreed to define the Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization. In Israel, they speak of painstaking work by the foreign ministry in cooperation with the Mossad and military intelligence, and of repeated conversations by Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar to break down objections. The meaning in Europe, of course, is anyone identified with a Revolutionary Guard becomes a criminal, with enforcement implications and also an economic blow to a body estimated to be responsible, and listening to this crazy number, for 30 to 50% of Iran's economy. Now guys, in Israel, we're on high alert. The Air Force is on very high state of readiness for defense and also attack, and Israel makes clear it will not repeat the 1991 mistake. Meetings are taking place between Admiral Brad Cooper, the commander of CENTCOM, and senior officials in Israel, including Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir and Air Force Commander Tomer Bar. Military Intelligence Chief Shlomi Binder is in Washington for talks and briefings. And the message here is very sharp. If Iran pulls Israel into the event, the response will be with force. Now everything is moving between ships in the Gulf, ultimatums in the White House, and a metro system that is turning into a shelter. The next question is already in the air. If not even a single missile has been fired yet, why can we still say that the attack on Iran has already begun? I want to explain, but before we continue, I remind you to support us. Click the like button, leave a comment where you write what you think, and most importantly, share. Share our content with as many people as possible. Now let's continue. So as I said, but this is important, the European Union has closed the loop and defined the Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organization. It's not a missile and not a bomb, but it's an unusual move on a Western scale. It was locked in by decision of all 27 countries and signals to Tehran that the pressure has already moved to a practical stage, and not just rhetorical. And this matters now because when you define the regime's military economic arm as terrorist, you create legal, economic, and political ground that makes it very hard to go backwards. And from here to the central question, if not even a single missile has been fired yet, why can we say that the attack on Iran has already begun? There's no need to chase the question of when, because on the ground there is movement. And the public preoccupation in recent weeks, yes or no an attack, and what it will look like may be part of the deliberate fog. No one really knows what is going through Trump's mind, and no one knows the full plan. And therefore, it's more accurate to measure what is already happening and the meanings that are already identifiable. Now first, in the last 2 weeks of the organized American Western case has been built that prepares legitimacy for action. It begins with flooding materials on the repression and massacre of protesters, and the shift from a general discourse to a discourse of direct responsibility by the regime's mechanisms. At the same time, the American demands were set clearly and sharply. No nuclear and additional red lines on other capabilities. Trump himself confirms that contacts and talks with Tehran and speaks publicly in the language of warning. No nuclear, and the internal message, stop killing protesters, meaning an option was given. Conditions were set, and the Iranian refusal plays a role within the framing that justifies the next step. Now second, direct pressure is being applied to the Revolutionary Guard as a system. The European declaration is not only symbolic, it immediately translates into tools of asset freezes, travel bans, and criminalization by organizational affiliation. And it reaches deep into the Iranian economy, where the Revolutionary Guards have heavy influence. In simple words, anyone who dreams that one day he would flee the West understands the door is narrowing. Now the personal dilemma begins: regime survival or personal survival. Third, in the military arena, the attack has already been conducted in the form of building opening conditions. The United States is moving assets, defining missions, and holding force in the region in a way that creates a credible threat even without firing. The Iranians are also playing, on the same board, a live-fire drill in the Straits of Hormuz, warning of disruption maritime traffic, and the message that the friction point could be the bottleneck of the global economy. This is an unusual step that forces Washington to choose how to respond, because any disruption there is not only regional. Now, at the same time, Iran is keeping a diplomatic channel open to stop the slide. Foreign Minister Arakchi goes to Ankara, and Turkey is trying to mediate, including ideas for direct talks between leaders. Behind the scenes, other countries are also working to prevent confrontation. But the very race, emergency talks alongside force deployment, is part of the stage in which the attack has already begun. Because it changes positions, it forces commitments, and it sets new lines in the arena. And you can't separate this from Israel. At the military level here, they are raising alert and preparing for the system mainly for the scenario of an Iranian response and regional consequences. In recent days, there have been meetings and coordination between senior American officials and senior Israeli officials, including dialogue with U.S. Central Command. Now, this is not after the attack. This is before the attack. This is building an operational framework. Now, guys, when a legitimacy file is built, when the legal doors are closed on the Revolutionary Guard, and when naval and air power stand in position, the campaign has already begun. Even without firing, the question now is not whether the pressure will continue, but whether, in the White House, they will decide between a broad move, a limited move, or continued political economic strangulation. And what that means for Israel as it prepares for an Iranian response on all fronts. So let's zoom in on what's happening in Israel. But before that, click the subscribe button, Please don't for nothing, but you stay tuned to the truth and real time and never miss the boots on the ground. We're not a single episode of Boots on the Ground. Okay, let's continue. Hold on, I want to just check on the comments for just 1 second. Okay. Guys, if you had any question about this is alive or not, you know the answer. This is not an edited program. So guys, did you know you can invest in one of the world's most innovative economies, the nation of Israel, just as easily as you invest in America's markets? That's why today I'm excited to introduce you to our friends and sponsors at Wise Money Israel, who I've personally known and trusted for many years. Their CEO and his family are longtime friends, and I trust them completely. Now, whether you're looking to elevate your 2026 investment strategy, diversify internationally, or support Israel and its economy, Wise Money Israel offers professional guidance to help you participate in one of the world's most dynamic markets. SEC-registered Wise Money Israel manages Israeli stock and bond accounts for investors from over 30 nations who want to capitalize on Israel's position as a global innovation powerhouse. Their Israel-based professionals provide expert access to companies in Israel, traditional and high-growth sectors. And as of today, Wise Money Israel manages over $100 million in client assets with integrity and biblical focus. Now, if you're looking to fulfill your biblical mandate by supporting Israel, we highly recommend that you reach out to them. Click the link in the description below or visit wisemoneyisrael.com/TBN. Again, that's wisemoneyisrael.com/TBN for a free consultation today. Once more, that's wisemoneyisrael.com/TBN. Okay, let's go to part 2 of this broadcast as we continue over here. Hold on, I want to check on the comments. Just 1 second. Okay. The IDF announces another military exercise against the backdrop of tensions with Iran. And at the same time, the Air Force is keeping aircraft and crews on high alert, both for defensive and for the possibility of a rapid response that will be needed. This is not another drill. This is marking a state of readiness when the air defense system is operating around the clock and when the operation rooms are updated every hour. The meaning is clear. Israel is preparing as if the next fire could arrive without long warning. In the past 2 weeks, the American Axis is also connected to this. Now, according to the reports, intensive intelligence work is taking place with Washington, including meetings with senior figures in the American security system. The goal is one, to create a target picture, understand what will be considered a red line, and define what a combined action looks like if Israel is required to defend itself. At the very same time, the U.S. continues to tighten its regional presence at sea and in the air. And the Iranian threat is once again focusing on the most sensitive maritime space, the Straits of Hormuz. Iran has already issued warnings to ships about a live fire drill, a move that signals it is ready to play on the nerves of the energy market and maritime trade, not only the Israeli home front. Now, while Israel measures every risk in order to protect its citizens, the regime in Iran is measuring something completely different. There, the signals are aimed inward. In the streets of the cities across Iran, people are not asking for more easing, they're asking for air. They are crying out for help. And facing that cry are the Revolutionary Guards and the Basij, with a method that has one goal, to break the will. And here we need to say it straight, without unnecessary drama. The repression in Iran is not dispersing protests, it is an intimidation machine. According to the international reports, in the latest wave of protests, thousands were killed. And the internet, the last rope connecting families to the world, almost disappeared. The shutdown has lasted for long weeks, and the damage is not only communicational, it is economic and social. And it isolates people precisely when testimonies, images, and names are most needed. The testimonies repeat the same pattern, an almost total internet cutoff, so people can't document, can't call for help, and can't see that they're not alone. And even when access returns, it returns in a trickle. The meaning on the ground is simple. A protest can disappear without a video. A disappearance can become a rumor, and a rumor can become fear that prevents others from leaving the house. Within this reality also come the hardest reports. and some of them still can't be fully verified because of the blockage of the fear. There are reports of the use of short-range fire to disperse protesters, and of severe injuries to the eyes and faces, a pattern that appears again and again in medical testimonies. There are claims of the use of dispersal ammunitions and shrapnel rounds. There are also harsh testimonies of violence inside of commercial areas, including claims of arson and harm to civilians trapped in closed spaces. Things that are very difficult to verify in real time when there is no free communication on the ground. That is why, guys, when it is not settled, we say it carefully. These are reports that are coming from people living in fear, trying to cry out. And within all of this, the question also arises of who's operating the hand. Here the Revolutionary Guard and the Basij enter the picture. According to some reports, they're not only a law and order force, they're an organized repression force. They seal off neighborhoods, they raid homes at night, they gather people without a clear process, they apply punishment to produce one single effect: to push the protest away from the street and force it back inward, into the family homes, into imposed silence, into tears that are not documented. There are also reports of especially extreme punishment against those who refuse to fire at protesters. This is a message to every young soldier. You don't choose conscience, you choose survival. And the second message is to families. Do not try to be heroes, because the regime is ready to pay a blood price in order to remain. Now guys, here comes the paradox of the last few weeks. The more the world talks about when will there be a strike, the more the regime uses its time to settle internal accounts, as if the external focus grants it an umbrella, as if the noise around a strike gives it cover to do the oldest thing in the Middle East: repression to the edge of the population's ability. Now at the same time, Iran itself is broadcasting outward a warlike message. It threatens in the maritime arena, sets exercises and signals it is ready to create a crisis in that space in order to deter. It is the same method to turn the entire region into a hostage, so the world thinks twice. And meanwhile, it's a bit ironic, but Iran's threat to the United States is that it will shoot at Israel. The reports on American preparations at sea and in the air connect directly to this: strike groups, destroyers, aircraft, electronic warfare, and intelligence capabilities. It looks like the building of a theater, not like a threat of television. And when all of this is happening, the regime in Tehran understands one single thing: it is weak on the inside. It must look to the outside. So yes, not a single missile has been fired yet, but the attack, in the broad sense, has already begun. It began with force maneuvering, it began with building an intelligence envelope, it began with economic and legal pressure aimed straight at the regime's power centers, and it also began, and above all, with a picture now being formed: Israel prepared to defend its citizens, and the Iranian regime is choosing to fight its own citizens. In the end, the big question is no longer only when and how, the question is what will break first: Iran's ability to hold the street in fear, or the pressure from outside that is beginning to squeeze its air. And while the White House debates between a broad move, a limited move, or continued pressure, here in Israel, they're preparing first and foremost for the Iranian response, and for what we'll do to the entire region. And we will be here to bring you the whole truth in real time, and to report to you in real time what is happening in the Holy Land. Once again, I'm Mati Shoshani, bringing you the whole truth, everything about Israel. So join us in shared prayer for the people of Israel. Keep spreading the truth, share and follow us. And most importantly, do not forget to pray for the safety of the American soldiers stationed in the Middle East. Pray for the IDF soldiers wherever they are, in the air, at sea, and on the land. Pray for the safety of our leaders, that they will make the right decisions. And most importantly, pray for the peace of Jerusalem.